Hey guys, welcome back to Ham Radio for Non-Techies. On today's show, this is part 2 of our 2-part series on learning how to solder and getting over your fear of soldering. So without further ado, we're going to go right down to the shop and get this thing rolling. That's right here, right now on Ham Radio for Non-Techies. All right, guys, so good morning, and we're going to get right into it and start with the soldering lesson. So I will be using my Yaesu FT-991A today, and instead of using these, I know I talked about these and the other big magnifying glass that I've got. Somebody had mentioned in the comments, I totally forgot that I had one, was a little head magnifier like this. This little cheap one I bought, and it has different size magnifying glasses that'll fit in here, and you can actually compound them together to get more magnification out of something in case you don't have one that's powerful enough. But the one I got in here now works just fine. This tilts up so you can get it out of your way and look at things. You can bring it right back down to your viewing and comfort level. I'll see if I can seek out a pair of these and put them into the Amazon store before the end of this video. So we'll get that rocking and rolling for you. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and fire up the soldering iron. And I keep mine at 375. That seems to be a sweet spot for me with the solder I'm using and everything else that I'm doing. So we're going to get that all heated up. Also, the tip that I'm using on here, I changed out the tip. The other day I had see if I can get that in focus here. The other day I had a weird little tip on this thing. It was really sharp and pointy. This one has a little bit of a flat edge on it. And that's the one I'm going to probably use today because I think that works a little bit better, heats up more surface area a lot quicker, and allows me to be more efficient with my soldering. So with that being done, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll see you in the next section. All right, guys, with my magnifiers firmly in place, we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to do is learning about how to tin wires. So tinning a wire means stripping off a section of the wire and then adding a little bit of solder to that, so you can then put that onto a board or somewhere and just touch it a little bit and get to adhere to the surface or the component you're trying to solder with. So with that, we're going to go ahead and grab our snips here. This is a 22 gauge wire. So I'm going to cut off a little bit more than what I normally need. And you'll see I've got strands there. So I'm going to go ahead and twist those up a little bit and get that all nice and done. And I'm going to put that into my little alligator clips here. And we're going to do the same to the blue wire, which is right here. And we'll go ahead and twist that one up as well. Now, if you're going to join two wires together, which we might just go ahead and demo that as well. If you're going to join two wires together, I would probably go ahead and get these twisted somehow, or just tin both sides, and then using the helping hands here, put them together, and then touch them again with the soldering iron to get them to stay put, and also have a little length of heat shrink to put across that eventually when you get done. Okay, so for purposes right now, we're just going to learn how to tin the wires. And it might be a little bit hard to see. I'm trying to work with what I can here, guys. Just bear with me. So we're going to just heat up this wire on the end and run a little bit of solder on it. You want to get your solder and just get a little bit of it on there. Just get a little bit on the tip, just like so. So we got a little there. We want to heat up the wire just momentarily while we paint on the tinning. And that's it. Go back and maybe try again here, but I think that's pretty good. You just want to get a little bit of solder onto the actual wire itself. Do it again over here. We heat up. And we just paint it onto the solder, or onto the wire. And that is tinning wires. So say I wanted to join these two now. I might go in and first off grab a little bit of heat shrink. You want to get the appropriate size heat shrink for the job. So in this case, we use a small little piece here, overlapping the joint a little bit. I'll go ahead and slide that onto the wire, just nice far back. And we'll get these two together, like so. Just want them to stay put on the joint. And we'll get our solder again. And we'll just heat up. Yep. And that is not cooperating with me. There we go. So with that being done and that solder joint being done on there, we can now take our heat shrink, and I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. And I showed you guys I had this little reworking gun with my setup here, but I use it as a heat gun because it does produce a nice amount of heat and it's perfect for doing heat shrink. So with that being done, we'll let that heat up here for a second. I keep that at 400 degrees. And we just go over the heat shrink. Nice and easy. I'll go ahead and get this out of the we just do our heat shrink. Doesn't take much. And now we have a nice bond, a nice tight joint for our wires. So next, I think we're just going to go into getting into some practice and do some little soldering techniques. Again, guys, I'm not a professional at this. I'm doing what I know from what I learned from books and from people showing me different little things over the years. But you know, the stuff that I do has not failed me yet. It has not caused any issues or problems. It is always better to try to hone your skills and get your skills in soldering as good as you can, which is why I'm going to suggest you guys get some of the parts here and do some practice soldering before you actually build a real project you have to rely on. Okay, so the next section here, we're going to practice our soldering by grabbing a PCB board. And this is just a little breadboard I found for like $1 over at my local electronics store. And it's just got a bunch of little holes in it for, you know, I guess you can make your own things with it or whatever. But I want to use this to practice my soldering technique. And this is probably one of the best ways to do this. So as you can see, I already kind of started here. I'm just making little beads. I'm basically going to put the soldering iron up to, I want you to make sure the flat side is touching it and get in contact. You're going to put it up to the PCB board and then grab it and lift up. Grab it, lift up. Heat, apply, lift up. Heat, apply, lift up. Heat, apply, lift up. And you'll notice that I've got nice little shiny beads on here. Now, if I had an actual component coming through the bottom of this board, it would actually, you know, solder it correctly. But this is just to get you used to and get you over the fear of soldering. All you're doing is heating up this section and heating up whatever component you're adding to the board and heating up this to melt to join the two together. It's just like, it's like hot glue, but with metal. So again, apply pressure, apply that, pull up. Here, here, here. Oh, I messed that one up. So you can have mistakes. So apply pressure or heat, add solder, pull up. Heat, solder, pull up. And you just sit here and practice this over and over again. And this is what kind of taught me over the years how to do this stuff and get over my fear of soldering. Like I said, my first solder project, I told you guys about this in a previous video and on a couple of lives with some of the other YouTubers. My first soldering project was building an actual lightsaber. And I really wanted one, but I didn't want to spend $600 on one, so I bought parts from a company and got all the pieces I needed. And it came with all these little soundboards, little tiny things that are, you know, a tenth the size of this board here. And I had to attach multiple wires to this and wires up into the frame and wires to the LEDs and this and that. So it was a lot of work, but it forced me, because I wanted something really bad, it forced me to learn soldering and get over my fear and just get in here and start doing it. So I actually literally started off with one of these things, doing exactly what I'm doing here with you. So applying heat and up, apply heat, solder, up. Apply heat, solder, up. You just keep going along. If you make a mistake, try to remember what you did to make that mistake and don't repeat that. Don't repeat that. Again, up, up, and up. I think you get the idea here. It didn't take very long to do that, and that keeps everything working nicely. So I'm going to clean off my tip, and we're going to move on to actually soldering components. This doesn't have to be a very long video. There's only so much I can show you with this before it's just like you either get it or you don't. So I'm hoping that with these little demonstrations here, you're going to pick this up and figure this stuff out. So let's go ahead and get this switched out with the other project board, and we're going to start talking about how to get components attached to your project board. So as I stated in the last video, I picked up this little Learn to Solder kit, and it's more for you guys than me because I can already solder. But it's a little kit that I found. If you can find something like this, it's kind of cool. You can actually use this to learn how to solder different parts and things onto a board. It'll build up your skills, it'll build up your confidence and get you to the point where you're not worried about soldering. But I got this little kit here, and one side of the board, this side over here, is to just practice putting components in and then flipping it over and soldering your parts. The the other side over here is to actually build a little blinking LED thingy. So in the bag, you get two sets of components. And the first side here is your practice components, and the second side here is the actual project components. So we're gonna cut this one open here and start with the practice components first and get that rolling and see if we can get this board ready to go. So I'm gonna get this all mounted up, and when we come back, we'll be ready to start this project. Okay guys, we have our component board here. This is the side you'll be soldering on, and you'll be putting your components on the other side and pushing them through to then solder on this side. Now what I like to do, and I showed you guys in one of the videos when I did the CW hotline build, I like to keep a little piece of some tape around so I can actually tape components down. So I'm going to go ahead and get the practice components open and get those all laid out. All right, so first up, we're going to try some little capacitors. So I want to put this little capacitor onto this board. I'm going to flip it upside down here, and we're going to bend it out a little bit. So when I get that down in there, you know, decently mounted, I'm just going to grab a little piece of tape, and we'll just tape that little guy down there like that. Don't have to be anything crazy. Then we just flip it over, and now we have a nice little work surface in which to solder on. So the technique is going to be the same here. We're going to apply heat, apply solder, and pull up. And then when I get done, I'll snip off. Now some people like to prefer to get these things in and then snip them first and then do the soldering. Personal preference, all right? Do it whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But you can do it either way, and I think you'll probably be all right. So with this, I'm going to again clean off my tip. I'm going to apply the flat side to the board, get some solder, and then up. We get a nice shiny little joint there. And I'm about to run out of solder here, but I want to try to use up what I've got. Now, if you, like I said, if you screw up somewhere, you can always go back, add a little bit more, and just go back and do it. But you want to make sure that that solder joint is shiny. If it comes out dull, redo it. That won't be a decent joint that'll work for you. So again, over here, just going to put that in, a little solder, and lift up. And I believe that's okay. I'm happy with that. So now you can see our solder joint's nice and shiny. It's got a little bit on the tip there. This isn't going anywhere. I can pull the tape off now and save that for the next piece, but that's good. That's perfectly soldered onto that. So now you can then grab your snips and come through here and just snip off your components like so. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to stop the tape here for a second. I'm going to go ahead and load this thing up with a whole bunch of different components because the technique is going to be the same. I'm just going to go ahead and get all the components put in here, and we'll get those all soldered up. The last one we're going to do is this little chip things. You're going to have these sometimes, not something like this, but you'll have a multi-prong item that needs to be soldered in, and that takes a little bit more effort because they're so close together. You got to be careful not to bridge them, and bridging is a bad thing. If you don't know what bridging is, it means when you have two components that are really close together and you solder one and solder the other and the solder goes in the middle and touches them so that they're connected, that's bridging. You want to avoid that because that can screw up and destroy your electronics project. All right, one quick thing. A lot of your components come like this where they're all stretched out and just straight, and you got to figure out how to get them to evenly space inside of here. What I do for that, I just kind of set it on the board and eyeball where I need to make my little bend points. Once I figure that out, I'll take my needle nose pliers and I'll get it to close to that area where I think it's supposed to be. I'll bend it over. I'll flip it around. Just like so. And hopefully that's going to fit in just fine. Also, a lot of these things might be directional as far as how you're supposed to place them in. You need to pay attention to where the instructions are. The stripes do mean things, and they do indicate which direction something's supposed to go into the board sometimes. So if you RTFM, read the manual. So if I'm correct with my assumption here, I should be able to pop that in, and it fits perfectly and almost perfectly spaced. Okay, so with that being done, I'm going to go ahead and get tape on all this, and we'll be right back. Okay, so with the components all taped down now, we can flip this over, and we have this huge wire farm mess. But we expected that. Make sure that everything's still staying flush. If not, reposition your tape. Make sure all the components stay where they're supposed to be. You don't want anything falling out or acting weird on you. So we're just going to go ahead and start. I got to readjust a wire here. I don't like the way that's facing for me to start soldering, and I'll do the same with this one. I believe this is a diode or something like that. Okay, so I'm good with the rest of it here. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to solder, and we'll snip wires and make our way up the path and just keep going down little tiny roads here until we get everything soldered up. Again, same principles all apply, except this time I'm going to use new solder. So I'm going to come in, apply a little heat to both the wire and the PCB board, get my solder in there, and lift up. Same thing here. Solder, lift up. Solder, get it on the board, lift up. Solder, lift up. Now, as you can see, I'm just going through here and just making little solder joints, taking my time. I'm not in a big rush. I'm staying focused on the work at hand and making sure everything works smoothly. So now with those 4 components done, I'm going to go ahead and grab my snips and clear out this little forest here, so to speak. You know, people make a big deal about soldering. It's not that. It's scary at first because it's something new you don't know about. But just getting in and doing it, especially doing it like this, grabbing a little practice kit, something that didn't cost a whole lot so you're not losing anything in case you screw it all up. You know, it's a good way to find out how good your soldering skills are, or to hone your soldering skills. So I'm just coming through and I'm working my way. And just doing my thing. Having fun. Now, why am I making such a big deal about soldering? Well, in ham radio, you can buy all kinds of stuff. And with the current state of the world, supply chain shortages as of 2022, and all the stuff that's going on, things are expensive. Antennas are getting expensive, components are getting expensive. if you can build things on your own, A, you learn a skill. B, you can be as creative as you want and source your own components and build anything you want. Now, I'm thinking more, I like doing the antennas. I love building antennas. I had no intention of ever doing that, but then I started doing it, and so I built my first antenna. I think it was I think my first antenna was probably a 49-to-1 antenna that I built. I bought a little electrical box over at Home Depot, went on Amazon or on eBay. I got a guy on eBay I buy my toroids from. Went down to my local electronics store, bought my magnet wire and the capacitors that I needed, and SO239s, came back and assembled everything and just kind of followed along some instructions. But, that same box assembled would have cost $50-$60. I think I paid $10, $12, $15 for it, and a couple minutes of my own time learning a new skill, and I got a killer little 49-to-1 antenna. So moving on here, we're going to keep snipping. Just keep that all nice and flush. And hopefully you guys can see on the camera here how good that actually looks. So that came out really, really nice. I'm very happy with how that came out. So next we'll do the same thing over here with these next components. Now in particular, I want to show you, let's see, let me get my things out of the way here. Right here, I believe, is a diode, and you have three little connections really close together. Not as close together as the K6ARK antenna, where I had to put them in there, or I had a oh no, what was it? No, it was a CW hotline. The CW hotline had one of these in there, but the holes were way closer, and it's so much easier to go in and accidentally screw up and make a solder bridge by accident. So we're going to do this here real quick and get this also soldered. But again, be methodical in how you do your soldering, and you shouldn't have a problem. Let's get that on and up. On and up. Pull out more solder. On and up, and there. As you can see from here, all three are individually soldered without any bridges or any nice gaps in between everything. So nothing got connected to the other wires on here. So again, go back through. We'll snip and snip and snip. Get those out of here. And we'll just keep moving forward. The kit that I put up on my Amazon store for building a little FM radio. That might not be a bad idea to try out if you can't find anything else. If you can find another kit out there that's something like this, where it's just a BS kit where you have some components you just kind of practice soldering with, get one of those. But I think for that you get a reward at the end of it, which is always kind of cool and lets you know you did something right. Doing this like I'm doing right now, since there's no real project here, it's just me practicing soldering, I don't know if any of this stuff actually works. So if we go over and build the other side over here, that will let us know. Let me zoom back out again so you guys can actually see what the hell it is I'm doing. All right. But yeah, at least building the FM transmitter, you guys would get an opportunity to not only learn how to solder, hone your skills, but at the end of it, you get a little FM radio. That can't be all that bad. So we're just going to go in and we're going to lift up. Go in, lift up. That's the biggest part to me as far as soldering goes, is the technique of getting the solder on there. You heat it, melt it, lift up. Heat it, melt it. Oh, I screwed that up, so I already screwed up. Melt it, lift up. But I think you get the idea here we're just practicing. It gets you used to it gets the muscle memory going, so you can go back and do this over and over and over again. And once you start doing this, I think if you built a little kit like this or built a little transistor radio, your confidence level would increase by quite a bit, and you'd be out there buying all kinds of antenna kits and all kinds of stuff just to see if you could do it. You know, and the antenna kits, like I said, they're not that expensive. You go off and source your own parts, you can do it pretty cheap. The K6 ARK antenna is a very big challenge. I do not suggest doing that as your first one. Maybe go for the KM4 ACK 49-to-1 end-fed half-wave when he has them in stock. That's a great antenna. He's got big components, big parts, very easy to do, 30, 45 minutes. Even as a beginner, you can build this thing no problem, and you have a cool little antenna in the end. So with that being done, I think I'm going to flip this over now. I get this tape off of here. Get this tape off of here so you can actually see what it was that we assembled. And that was our little project there so far. We got all these components in. We got the little diode in there. All right, so that last little component there I was talking about was getting this little beggar in there. So we're going to get that set up, and I'm going to grab my little piece of spare tape over here and get that on the board. We're going to flip that around. So this might be a little bit harder to see, but there are actually little prongs sticking up that is really, really small and really, they're really small. Now this is where it's going to get a little trickier, and you're going to have to pay more attention, because at this point you do not want bridges on this either. So we're going to take our time, but the same principle applies. Pressure or heat, solder, lift up. Heat, solder, lift up. Heat, solder, lift up. So there we go. And upon inspection here, we'll zoom in a little bit. You can see that my components are all nice. No bridging, no gaps, nothing. That's basically it, guys. I mean, there's not a whole lot you're going to have to do. You know, I'm not going to demonstrate how to solder an SO239. The principle is exactly the same as it is here. You're going to have your SO239, you have your little connectors or little parts you're going to solder to. You'll drop some solder down, drop in a wire, heat the solder up, pull it away, let it cool, done. It's definitely something you want to practice before you put it into actual use. So maybe go pick up some SO239s. If you want to make your own antennas, or try with BNCs. You know, BNCs are a good way to learn as well. And just try different components. These are all cheap items. They're like 50 cents to $1 that you can just go and practice with. And if you don't screw them up too bad, you can probably actually use them in real life applications for your soldering. But I think this is a decent way to get you going. And I think we're going to go ahead and try to build this up next. So we're going to get this. Okay, so after going through the schematics and following the instructions in the manual on how to build little flashing LED thing here. Again, same principles that applied over here apply over here. Space out your parts, bend them a little bit. Make sure your directions are right. Your LEDs are polarized. You have to go in a specific direction in order to work. And hopefully, if I followed everything correctly, everything here should work. The only thing I'm not hooking up yet is the 9-volt battery terminals, which will go here and here. So we're going to get this thing flipped over after I get some tape on it. And we're going to go ahead and start soldering that. All right, let's go back and do our solder. I'm just going to start at the bottom, work my way up. And doing that practice side Really helps prepare you for doing the actual application of building this little LED flasher thing. So it's good practice to get in there. You know, and if you have to practice me, I'll be honest with you guys, if I don't do a whole lot of soldering for a while, I'll grab that little PCB board and sit there and practice my technique till I get my muscle memory back and remember how I did all this stuff. Because you can forget these things sometimes. You know, we're only human. It happens. I get it. But we've kind of press on. Do what we have to do. All right, so before I do anything else, I'm going to flip it over on this side. I'm going to pull the tape off, make sure everything's looking like it's supposed to, like where I left it. And I believe I'm okay with that. So, now we just go through. And cut our leads. You know, like I said, I might not be the best soldering person in the world, but I can do enough to get projects done and enjoy myself. Okay, so the last thing is going to be getting the positive and negatives attached. So for that, I'm probably just going to do this one at a time. And I'm going to run the positive through first. Bring that up into this side. And I'm going to get a little bit of solder onto my iron. Just get that on there, like so. Again, I'm just going to tip a little bit of solder into my soldering iron tip. I'm going to flip this around, run that wire through. And just let that sit there for a second until it makes contact and heats up everything. Maybe not. I'll come back and hopefully finish the job. There we go. Same with this one, so that looks so horrible. There we go. Wires are soldered. We now have this, so let me go grab a 9-volt battery. All right, so since I don't have a 9-volt battery around here, I'm using the actual DC output feature on my soldering station, which just requires hooking up these little thingies here. And we will grab, I got it set for 9 volts. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the thing here, put on positive and negative, and look at that. We have flashing LEDs. So, point proven. This all worked out fine. You see on the bottom here, our soldering joints look okay, nothing wrong, everything's nice and shiny. Again, this is a great little kit, or even that FM transmitter kit. It's going to get you to build something and get you into soldering and hopefully get you past your fear. And you know, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. If you don't think you're really going to get into soldering and getting into building stuff, you know, don't waste your time. But I think you're shortchanging yourself in the ham radio hobby, by not at least giving it a try. So, if you have a friend who has a soldering iron, borrow one of theirs, or your parents might have a soldering iron. Borrow one from them, try it out, just play with it a little bit. I think it'll catch on with you. I think you'll be very happy with getting stuff done like this. Anyway, guys, we're going to go back up to the studio and do a wrap up, so I'll see you upstairs. So there you have it, guys. That was a pretty cool little build. Wasn't very difficult. And like I said, go out and find a little kit. Maybe go on Amazon or search around for Learn to Solder kits. I have that little FM radio kit you can build, and I think it's like 15 bucks. It'll be a good way to learn and get over your fear and see if you like soldering at all.
The one thing I forgot to mention, as far as flux goes, if you're going to use any kind of flux, you want to use rosin core. You do not want to use anything that has acid core or what is it called? Zinc chloride. Zinc chloride and acid core flux is a no-no for electronics. Try to stick with the rosin core. And when you get done, grab something to kind of wipe up the rosin off of it and get that off your board so it doesn't attract dust and other contaminants. But I think with that having been said, this was a cool little build. I hope that this video is going to help you guys out. If you have any questions, hit me up. Again, I'm not a professional guy when it comes to soldering, but the stuff that I did downstairs in that video, I think really demonstrated what you can do. And look, if you get that skill, you're going to be able to build anything you want. So having the ability to not have to sit there and buy an antenna, but go build your own antenna and have the full experience of that, it increases your skills in ham radio. It's going to make you a better ham. It's going to make you a better electronics person. So there's tons of benefits to it. So I hope you guys will give it a shot and try it out. Anyway, give me a thumbs up if you like this video. I try to keep it short, but, you know, it might have been a little bit long here and there, but I hope it helped you out. And don't forget, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Click on the little bell to be notified when I do new videos. And until then, guys, this is Ham Radio for Non-Techies. Have a great day. Have a great week, and we are clear.